The crystal spires of Nexus Prime gleamed in the artificial daylight, their translucent surfaces refracting prismatic patterns across the Grand Council chamber. At the center of the chamber, a circular table hovered motionless above the polished floor, its luminescent surface displaying the insignias of 12 interstellar civilizations. The 13th seat, the one bearing Earth's blue and green emblem, remained conspicuously empty. Ambassador Jake Morrison stood beside the vacant chair, his formal diplomatic uniform crisp, despite 18 months of grueling negotiations. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, evidence of countless sleepless nights spent preparing proposals that were invariably dismissed. Beside him, Lisa Hayes maintained a perfect professional demeanor, her tablet discreetly recording every word spoken, particularly the barbed insults that had become routine during these sessions. The representatives of the Galactic Council will now hear Earth's proposal regarding joint security operations in the Orion Spur, announced the translucent hologram that served as the chamber's neutral facilitator. Jake stepped forward, head held high, despite the poorly disguised contempt in the alien delegates' expressions. Distinguished representatives, the Earth Federation has prepared extensive data demonstrating our fleet's capabilities to assist in securing the Helios Centauri trade route. Our vessels have successfully intercepted pirate operations within our territory, and we believe a joint. Ambassador Morrison, interrupted Thesara, her tentacled appendages rippling with what Jake had come to recognize as amusement. How long has your species engaged in interstellar travel? 2 centuries, perhaps? Jake maintained his composure. Yes, approximately 200 years since our first extrasolar. Thesara's interruption was swift and cutting. 200 years. My civilization has navigated the void between stars for 35 millennia. The Zorak have done so for 20. Even the Balmorians, whom we consider relatively young, have 8,000 years of experience. Her voice took on a condescending tone that the translators couldn't or wouldn't filter out. Yet you stand before this council suggesting your handful of patrol ships could meaningfully contribute to galactic security. Suppressed laughter rippled around the chamber. Jake felt Lisa tense beside him, her stylus pressing harder against her tablet screen. The human proposal is not without merit, said Thesara, her blue tendrils waving languidly. The momentary hope Jake felt evaporated as she continued. Perhaps their ships could transport supplies or serve as observation posts, tasks better suited to their limited experience. Or perhaps, suggested Wook, his fur bristling with what passed for humor among his kind, the Earth colonies should be placed under the protection of more seasoned civilizations. For their own safety, naturally. Chancellor Vexar, whose silver skin shifted through subtle hues as he moderated the proceedings, made no attempt to redirect the conversation to the substantive proposal Jake had prepared. Instead, he added, "The Council has always recognized the potential of younger species. With proper guidance over the next few millennia, humans might evolve into suitable junior partners." Jake's hands gripped the edge of the hovering table. 18 months of diplomatic missions had led to this moment, a culmination not of progress, but of the Council's unwavering condescension. They had never intended to treat Earth as an equal. Every proposal, every concession, every demonstration of human capability had been met with the same patronizing dismissal. Our security forces have successfully intercepted pirate operations within our territory, Jake repeated, fighting to keep his voice level. The data we've prepared demonstrates, like a child with a toy gun, standing guard over its sandbox, Wook interjected, triggering another wave of alien laughter. Lisa's eyes met Jake's, and he saw his own frustration mirrored there. For 18 months, she had diligently recorded every insult, every dismissal, building a comprehensive record of the Council's contempt. What had initially been intended as diplomatic documentation had become a catalog of humiliation. Thesara's tendrils coiled thoughtfully. Perhaps the humans should focus on their own development before attempting to join galactic affairs. We could establish outposts in Earth territories to assist with your evolution. Of course. That seems reasonable, agreed Thesara. Humans clearly require supervision. Their military capabilities should be limited to prevent unfortunate incidents. The Council proposes that Earth relinquish control of its defense fleet, Chancellor Vexar stated, his skin shifting to a formal blue hue. In exchange for protection and guidance, this would be the first step toward eventual membership, in perhaps a millennium or two. The chamber fell silent as all eyes turned to Jake. The proposal wasn't merely insulting, it was effectively a demand for Earth's surrender. 18 months of patience, of believing in diplomacy, of trusting that persistence would eventually earn respect, crystallized into a moment of perfect clarity. Jake looked at Lisa, whose expression told him she had reached the same conclusion. "We can't continue this charade," he whispered. With deliberate movements, Jake closed his datapad, the sharp snap of its magnetic clasp echoing through the silent chamber. He straightened his uniform and faced the Council delegates directly. "The Earth Federation hereby withdraws from all negotiations with the Galactic Council," he announced, his voice ringing with quiet dignity. "We came seeking allies, not masters. We came offering friendship, not subservience. And we certainly did not come to surrender our sovereignty to those who mistake age for wisdom." The Council members stared in shock. Chancellor Vexar's skin flickered rapidly between colors, settling on a confused purple. "Ambassador Morrison, surely you understand the Council is offering guidance." "What you offer is subjugation, dressed as benevolence," Jake replied. "The Earth Federation rejects it completely. Our delegation will depart immediately. This meeting is concluded." Without waiting for a response, Jake nodded to Lisa, and together they walked toward the chamber's exit, leaving 12 stunned delegates behind them. "Ambassador!" Chancellor Vexar called after them, his voice losing its practiced condescension. "This is highly irregular. The Council has not dismissed." The doors slid closed behind them, cutting off the Chancellor's protests. In the corridor outside, Jake released a long breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "That felt good," Lisa admitted, her professional composure briefly giving way to satisfaction. 18 months of recording their insults. I was beginning to think we'd never stand up for ourselves. "Transmit the withdrawal notification to Earth immediately," Jake instructed, "and inform them." He paused, considering his words carefully. "Inform them that Phase 2 is now authorized." Lisa's eyes widened. "Are we really doing this?" Jake nodded, his expression grim but determined. "They've made their position clear. Time for us to make ours equally clear." As their shuttle departed from Nexus Prime's gleaming spaceport, Jake gazed out at the spectacular cityscape that housed the Galactic Council headquarters. For thousands of years, this had been the center of interstellar politics, the heart of civilization as the older species defined it. He wondered how long it would maintain that status after what was about to unfold. "Set course for the Alpha Centauri Gateway," he told the pilot. "We're going home." 3 days after the Earth delegation's abrupt departure, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. The atmosphere in the crystal chamber had transformed from smug superiority to tense apprehension. Catherine, the Council's chief intelligence officer, stood before the gathered delegates, his typical composure noticeably absent. The holographic displays surrounding him flickered, with reports streaming in from across Council space. "Distinguished representatives," he began, his voice tight. "I must report a situation of unprecedented concern. Over the past 72 hours, Earth Federation assets throughout Council territories have initiated what appears to be a coordinated withdrawal." Chancellor Vexar leaned forward, his skin a worried shade of orange. "Clarify withdrawal, Intelligence Chief." Catherine manipulated the holographic controls, bringing up a star map marked with dozens of flashing indicators. "Earth vessels, not merely diplomatic ships, but all registered human craft, are simultaneously departing their assigned stations and registered ports. More concerning, however, is what we're discovering in their wake. The display shifted to show a massive space station, its docking arms empty, its navigation beacons dark. This was Kepler Station, Thrawn explained. A supposedly minor human outpost that, we now realize, served as a critical navigation hub for 17 major trade routes. The humans have deactivated all systems and evacuated all personnel. Similar situations are occurring at stations throughout the Orion and Perseus sectors. Thesara's tentacles curled anxiously. Surely this is a temporary protest. They'll return once they realize the consequences of their actions. The evidence suggests otherwise, Thrawn replied, changing the display again. Our intelligence assets have uncovered disturbing information regarding Earth's true capabilities. Information that was apparently concealed during their negotiations with us. The hologram now displayed orbital imagery of massive shipyards orbiting Earth's moon, with thousands of vessels in various stages of construction. Additional images showed similar installations throughout the Alpha Centauri system. Conservative estimates place their naval strength at approximately 50,000 combat-ready vessels. Kithrin continued, his voice grave. Not the few hundred patrol ships they acknowledged in their council applications. The chamber erupted in shocked exclamations. Chancellor Vexar's skin paled to an alarmed white. That's impossible. Our intelligence services would have detected such a buildup. Apparently not, Thrawn replied dryly. It seems the humans have been somewhat selective in what they allowed us to observe. Furthermore, we're discovering that Earth operatives have been far more integrated into our infrastructure than previously recognized. New images appeared. Agricultural complexes, medical facilities, research stations, all now showing signs of abandoned operations. Dr. Linda Carter, who we believed was merely a human agricultural consultant on Proxima Fur, apparently supervised 80% of the planet's food production technologies. She and her entire team departed yesterday. Similar situations are occurring across dozens of worlds. Desara's tendrils had gone rigid with alarm. What of Dr. Patricia Moore? She was developing treatments for the Tholian respiratory plague. Departed, Thrawn confirmed. Along with all research data and treatment protocols, the plague has already resumed its spread in the outer colonies. General Wook slammed a furred fist onto the table. This is outrageous. A deliberate attack on council welfare. Not an attack, Thrawn corrected. Simply a withdrawal of services we had come to depend upon. Services provided by a species we collectively dismissed as insignificant. His tone carried a hint of irony that was lost on none present. Chancellor Vexar's skin had settled into an ashen gray. What of their military movements? Are they preparing for aggression? No, Thrawn replied. That's perhaps the most concerning aspect. They are simply leaving, completely, systematically. Without conflict or confrontation, human vessels are departing council space in an orderly fashion, maintaining strict adherence to established navigation protocols. He paused before adding, however, I must report that attempts to intercept or detain departing Earthships have been unsuccessful. Explain, demanded Thesara. Kithrin hesitated. The Eternal Glory, under General Wook's command, attempted to prevent the Guardian from departing the Rigel system. According to the incident report, the human vessel employed some form of targeted energy pulse that temporarily disabled the Glory's weapons and propulsion systems without causing permanent damage. By the time systems were restored, the Guardian had departed. Similar incidents have occurred in 7 other systems. The council chamber fell into stunned silence as the implications settled over the assembled delegates. These humans, these supposedly primitive newcomers they had spent 18 months patronizing, had embedded themselves deeply into council infrastructure, concealed their true capabilities, and now were executing a flawlessly coordinated withdrawal that was already causing cascading system failures throughout Council space. "We've been deceived," Chancellor Vexar finally stated, his voice hollow. "For 2 years, while we condescended to their delegation, they were—" He trailed off, unable to complete the thought. "They were taking our measure," Thrawn finished for him. "Learning our strengths, our weaknesses, our dependencies. And now they've identified exactly where and how their absence will cause maximum disruption with minimum effort." "We must respond forcefully," General Wook declared, his fur bristling with aggression. "Show these upstarts the consequences of challenging the Council's authority." Catherine's expression remained grave. "With respect, General, I would advise against that course of action. Our initial intelligence regarding human military capabilities was clearly flawed. Until we better understand the full extent of their technological advantages, direct confrontation would be unwise." "Are you suggesting the Council should capitulate to this tantrum?" Thesara demanded. "I am suggesting," Thrawn replied carefully, "that we reassess our position based on new information. The humans have demonstrated capabilities far beyond our previous estimations. They have executed a precisely calculated strategic withdrawal that has already compromised critical Council infrastructure. Yet they have studiously avoided direct conflict or casualties. That suggests they are sending a message, not initiating a war." Chancellor Vexar's skin had stabilized into a thoughtful blue-gray. "What message would that be, Intelligence Chief?" "That they are not, and never were, the primitive newcomers we assumed them to be," Kithron answered, "and that our dismissal of them was perhaps the most significant miscalculation the Council has made in centuries. As the strategic implications of Earth's withdrawal reverberated through the Galactic Council, the practical consequences spread rapidly across Council space. Commander Paul Rodriguez supervised the final shutdown sequence aboard Kepler Station, the massive installation that had served as a critical nexus for trade routes spanning 17 star systems. For 2 years, the station had operated under the guise of a minor human outpost, while quietly becoming indispensable to regional commerce. "Navigation beacons offline," reported his executive officer. "Traffic management systems disengaged. Automated customs protocols terminated. The last Earth personnel are aboard transports and ready for departure." Rodriguez nodded, surveying the command center one final time. "What's the status of non-human personnel?" "All have been transferred to Council vessels as directed. No casualties or incidents reported." "Perfect," Rodriguez responded. "Execute final withdrawal protocol. Authorization, Terra Invicta." Throughout the station, remaining systems initiated controlled shutdown sequences. Emergency protocols activated, ensuring life support would continue functioning for another 30 days, more than enough time for Council authorities to arrange evacuation of any remaining occupants. No lives would be endangered by this withdrawal, but the economic disruption would be profound and immediate. As Rodriguez boarded the last departing shuttle, he couldn't help but feel a twinge of regret. The station had been an impressive achievement of cross-species cooperation, despite the Council's official condescension toward human engineering. Now, it would stand as a dark, dormant monument to diplomatic failure. "Set course for Alpha Centauri," he instructed the pilot. "Maximum speed once we clear the navigation hazard zone." The shuttle accelerated away from the massive station, joining a procession of Earth vessels making similar departures across Council space, all precisely coordinated, all meticulously nonviolent, all strategically devastating. On Proxima IV, Dr. Linda Carter supervised the final stages of her team's withdrawal from the agricultural research complex they had established 3 years earlier. What had begun as a modest knowledge-sharing initiative had evolved into the backbone of the planet's food security system, with Earth crop science quietly becoming essential to feeding billions. "All portable equipment has been loaded," her assistant informed her. "The sealed instruction packets have been left for local authorities as directed." Carter nodded, surveying the massive hydroponic arrays that would soon begin to fail without expert maintenance. The sealed instructions would allow Proximan authorities to maintain basic operations, preventing starvation, but ensuring significant food shortages until they developed their own expertise. "What about the disease-resistant seed stocks?" she asked. "Basic varieties remain in storage as humanitarian provision." Her assistant confirmed. "Advanced strains have been removed per protocol." Carter sighed. The situation left a bitter taste. She had come to Proxima 4 genuinely hoping to share Earth's agricultural knowledge, to build bridges between civilizations. Instead, she had become an unwitting pawn in a larger strategic game, embedding human expertise so deeply into Council infrastructure that its removal would cause systemic disruption without direct harm. "Let's go home," she said simply. Throughout Council space, similar scenes played out across hundreds of facilities where human specialists had quietly become indispensable. Medical researchers departed with their most advanced treatments. Engineers withdrew from critical infrastructure projects. Navigators abandoned their posts at crucial transit hubs. None engaged in sabotage or destruction. They simply departed, taking their knowledge and expertise with them, leaving just enough basic information to prevent catastrophe, but ensure hardship. The Earth Federation's withdrawal strategy had been meticulously planned, a perfect demonstration of strategic leverage achieved not through military might, but through the careful positioning of seemingly minor assets in points of maximum impact. The Council had spent 18 months dismissing humans as insignificant newcomers, never recognizing how thoroughly those newcomers had integrated themselves into the foundation of Council operations. Now that foundation was crumbling, not with explosive destruction, but with the quiet, dignified departure of those who had helped build it. 6 months after Earth's withdrawal from the Galactic Council, the situation had deteriorated beyond even the most pessimistic projections. The Council chamber, once a showcase of crystal splendor, now operated with reduced lighting to conserve energy, a small but telling symbol of the broader crisis. Chancellor Vexar presided over a dramatically different assembly than the one that had so casually dismissed Ambassador Morrison. Gone was the air of superiority, replaced by grim determination and barely concealed anxiety. "The economic disruption continues to accelerate," reported the Council's Commerce Minister, her holographic displays showing plummeting indicators. With the Kepler navigation hub still offline, shipping costs have increased by 340% in affected sectors. 3 major trading houses have declared insolvency this week alone. "What of the Tholian respiratory plague?" Thesara inquired, her tentacles exhibiting the stiffness of profound stress. "Spreading unchecked in the outer colonies," came the response from the health minister. "Without Dr. Moore's treatment protocols, mortality rates have returned to pre-human intervention levels. Quarantine measures are failing in 4 systems." General Wook, whose military authority had been considerably diminished following the Eternal Glory incident, spoke next. "The Outer Rim situation deteriorates further. Without human security patrols supplementing our forces, piracy has increased 7-fold. 3 minor systems have formally requested direct Earth Federation protection, bypassing Council authority entirely." This last report sent a visible shock through the assembly. Chancellor Vexar's skin shifted to a disturbed purple. "They've contacted Earth directly, without Council sanction." "Yes," confirmed Cathron, who had risen in influence as his intelligence assessments proved increasingly accurate. "And they are not alone. Our diplomatic channels indicate that 17 member worlds are now engaged in unauthorized bilateral discussions with the Earth Federation. 3 major systems have formally notified us of their intent to withdraw from Council jurisdiction if the human situation is not resolved." The chamber erupted in alarmed exclamations. Chancellor Vexar raised his hands for silence, his skin cycling through distressed color patterns. "This fragmentation cannot continue," he declared, once order had been restored. "The Council has stood for 10,000 years as the center of civilization. If we allow member worlds to establish independent relations with Earth, the entire foundation of our authority will collapse. Perhaps, suggested Desara carefully, that foundation was less stable than we believed. Perhaps our approach to the humans revealed structural weaknesses that were already present. Her observation was met with uncomfortable silence. It had become increasingly difficult to ignore that the Council's dismissive treatment of Earth had been merely the most recent example of a long-established pattern, one that had alienated numerous younger species over millennia. Regardless, Chancellor Vexar continued, we must address the immediate crisis. The withdrawal of human expertise and resources has created critical systems failures across Council space. We cannot allow this situation to persist. What do you propose, Chancellor? Asked Thisara. Vexar's skin settled into a resolute blue. I propose we send an envoy to Earth, not to demand their return, but to request their assistance. The admission visibly pained him, but none present could deny its necessity. The carefully constructed narrative of Council superiority had collapsed under the weight of practical reality. They needed the humans far more than they had ever acknowledged. Who would undertake such a mission? General Wook asked, his tone suggesting he considered it beneath his dignity. I recommend Ambassador Quindar, Thrawn suggested. His diplomatic record is impeccable, and he was not personally involved in the unfortunate exchanges with the Earth delegation. Chancellor Vexar nodded slowly. Ambassador Quindar it shall be. He will travel to Earth with full authority to negotiate terms for renewed cooperation. His skin briefly flashed a reluctant gray before he added, whatever those terms may be. The silver-skinned diplomat who emerged from the sleek diplomatic vessel onto Luna Base had traveled far from the certainties that had defined his distinguished career. Ambassador Quindar had represented the Galactic Council in numerous delicate negotiations, always secure in the knowledge that he spoke from a position of unassailable authority. That certainty had evaporated during his journey to the Sol system. His first shock had come at the Alpha Centauri checkpoint, where his Council diplomatic vessel, once sufficient to command respect throughout known space, had been subjected to thorough but polite security scanning by Earth authorities. More surprising had been the escort assigned to guide him to Sol, not the token honor guard he had expected, but a substantial formation of warships that dwarfed his own vessel. Most shocking of all had been the realization that these ships represented not just humans, but at least a dozen other species, several of which he recognized as developing civilizations that the Council had relegated to observer status. Now, standing on the lunar surface with Earth hanging majestically in the black sky above, Quindar faced his most profound surprise yet. Stretching across the lunar landscape before him was an industrial complex of staggering scale, shipyards extending to the horizon, with thousands of vessels in various stages of construction. The manufacturing capacity on display rivaled anything in Council space, yet had somehow remained hidden from Council intelligence. Ambassador Quindar, greeted a uniformed human, approaching from a nearby structure. I'm Admiral Morrison. Welcome to Luna Base. Quindar's diplomatic training barely masked his shock at the title. Admiral, when last we met, you were Ambassador Morrison. The human's expression remained neutral. My diplomatic role was temporary. My primary position has always been Fleet Command. Quindar's skin shifted to a troubled violet as the implications settled. The supposedly junior diplomat, who had endured 18 months of Council condescension, had actually been a senior military commander all along, patiently observing, assessing, and likely planning the precise withdrawal that had thrown Council space into chaos. I see, Quindar managed. Admiral, I come representing the Galactic Council to discuss the current situation. Of course, Morrison replied. We've prepared suitable accommodations for your delegation. Tomorrow, You'll be granted observer status at the Federation Assembly, where representatives from Earth and our 63 allied species will consider the Council's position. 63. Quindar's skin fluctuated with astonishment. The Council records indicated human contact with perhaps a dozen minor species. Morrison's smile contained no warmth. The Council records were incomplete in many areas regarding Earth Federation activities. An unfortunate limitation of intelligence gathering. I'm sure you understand. As they walked toward the base complex, Quindar couldn't help but stare at the massive shipyards. These facilities, they're far beyond what we believed possible. Yes, Morrison agreed, matter-of-factly. Your assessment of our capabilities was inaccurate in several respects. Not entirely your fault. We were selective about what we allowed Council observers to see. He gestured toward a particularly massive vessel under construction. That's our newest class of exploration carrier, designed for long-range scientific missions, with substantial defensive capabilities. We're building 37. Quindar's diplomatic composure threatened to crack entirely. The industrial capacity required for such a program would rank among the highest in Council space, yet had somehow remained hidden from Council intelligence for years. Admiral, he said carefully, the Council has authorized me to discuss terms for renewed cooperation between our peoples. The withdrawal of Earth expertise has created significant disruptions. Yes, we're aware, Morrison interrupted. The refugee ships from the Tholian colonies have been arriving for weeks. We've deployed medical teams to address the respiratory plague. The situation on Proxima 4 is more challenging. The agricultural systems are failing faster than projected. We've sent emergency food supplies, but the long-term prognosis remains concerning. Quindar stopped walking, his skin shifting to a pale blue of shocked realization. You've been monitoring the situation? Providing assistance? Of course, Morrison replied, as if it were obvious. Our withdrawal was strategic, not punitive. We have no desire to see innocent populations suffer. We've maintained humanitarian operations throughout this transition. Transition? Quindar repeated, the word carrying ominous implications. Morrison regarded him steadily. Ambassador Quindar, I'll be direct. The Earth Federation has no interest in returning to the previous relationship with the Galactic Council. That chapter is closed. What we're willing to discuss are terms for the Council's integration into the Federation Alliance. Integration? Quindar's skin flashed alarmed patterns. The Council has stood for 10,000 years as the center of galactic civilization. Yes, Morrison acknowledged. And perhaps it served its purpose for much of that time. But the galaxy is evolving. The hierarchical structure the Council represents, where elder species dictate terms to younger civilizations, is obsolete. The Federation Alliance operates on principles of mutual respect and equal standing, regardless of a species' age or history. You're suggesting the Council should dissolve? Quindar could barely form the words. I'm suggesting it should transform, Morrison corrected. Your members would retain their sovereignty and dignity. But the era of Council supremacy is ending. Ambassador, the question facing you isn't whether this change will occur, but whether the Council will adapt to it or continue to decline. As they resumed walking toward the base entrance, Morrison added more gently, consider this. In the 6 months since our withdrawal, 63 independent species have formalized alliances with Earth, species the Council classified as developing or primitive. They've contributed technologies, cultural perspectives, and resources that have strengthened all participants. Meanwhile, the Council systems face economic collapse, health crises, and security threats. Which model appears more sustainable? Quindar remained silent, his diplomatic mind racing to process implications that would have seemed unthinkable just months earlier. The Council, the eternal, unassailable center of civilization, faced not merely a diplomatic setback, but an existential choice: evolution or obsolescence. Tomorrow at the assembly, Morrison continued, you'll observe representatives from civilizations across 3 galactic quadrants, many of whom the Council dismissed as insignificant, working together as equals. I suggest you watch carefully. Ambassador, the future of organized interstellar cooperation is being written, with or without the Council's participation. As they entered the lunar facility, Quindar caught sight of a massive holographic display showing real-time fleet movements throughout nearby sectors. The coordination displayed, the sheer number of vessels representing dozens of species operating in seamless cooperation, told a story that no diplomatic rhetoric could obscure. While the Council had spent centuries maintaining its hierarchical structure, Earth had quietly built something altogether different. An alliance of equals that was rapidly becoming the dominant force in the galaxy. One final observation. Ambassador, Morrison said as they reached Quindar's designated quarters. When we came to the Council, we genuinely sought peaceful cooperation. We endured 18 months of dismissal and condescension, hoping for recognition as equals. Remember that history when you return to Nexus Prime with our proposal. The path forward remains open, but it will not remain open indefinitely. With that, Morrison departed, leaving Quindar alone with thoughts that would have been treasonous in the Council chamber. Perhaps the humans had been right all along. Perhaps a civilization's value couldn't be measured in millennia. And perhaps the Council's greatest mistake hadn't been underestimating Earth's capabilities, but failing to recognize that the future belonged to those who built bridges rather than hierarchies. The next day, as Quindar observed the Federation Assembly, witnessing species from across the galaxy participating as equals in a vibrant democratic process, the truth became inescapable. The Galactic Council wasn't facing a diplomatic challenge. It was witnessing its own obsolescence. The choice before them wasn't whether to negotiate with Earth, but whether to join the new galactic order or fade into irrelevance. When he finally departed for Nexus Prime 3 days later, Quindar carried with him not demands or threats, but a simple invitation: join us or be left behind. The crystal spires of the Council headquarters would continue to gleam, but whether they would remain the center of galactic civilization or become monuments to a fading era depended entirely on the Council's ability to acknowledge its most fundamental mistake: the belief that age alone conferred wisdom, and that tradition alone conferred legitimacy. As his vessel accelerated toward the jump gate that would begin his journey home, Quindar found himself hoping that his fellow Council members would choose adaptation over pride. The alternative, continued decline while the Earth Federation and its allies thrived, was too painful to contemplate. The galaxy was changing. The only question remaining was whether the Galactic Council would change with it. 3 weeks after Ambassador Quindar's return to Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council convened an extraordinary session. The chamber's reduced lighting, once an embarrassing concession to energy shortages, had been reframed as an aesthetic choice, a small but telling example of the narrative adjustments underway. Chancellor Vexar presided over proceedings with a composure that belied the gravity of the moment. His skin maintained a steady blue hue, the color of formal deliberation, though occasional flickers of uncertainty disrupted the pattern. Distinguished representatives, he began, we have convened to consider the most consequential decision in the Council's 10,000-year history. Ambassador Quindar has presented the terms proposed by the Earth Federation regarding our potential integration into their alliance structure. The chamber remained unnaturally silent. The characteristic interruptions and sidebar conversations that typically punctuated Council proceedings were notably absent, replaced by a tense attentiveness that acknowledged the existential stakes. Before we proceed to formal consideration, Vexar continued, I have asked Intelligence Chief Kuthron to present his final assessment of our strategic position. Kuthron approached the central platform, his typically impassive demeanor now carrying an unmistakable gravity. The holographic displays surrounding him activated, showing a galactic map with political boundaries highlighted in various colors. "Distinguished representatives," he began. "The situation has deteriorated beyond our initial projections. In the 7 months since Earth's withdrawal, the territory under effective council governance has contracted by 37%. The map shifted, large sections changing from Council Blue to Federation Green or Independent Yellow. 17 member systems have formally withdrawn from Council jurisdiction," Catherine continued. 34 others have established bilateral relations with Earth in violation of Council protocols. Our economic indicators show catastrophic decline in remaining territories, with critical resource shortages projected within 60 days. He manipulated the controls, changing the display to show comparative fleet deployments. The disparity was stark. Council forces represented by a diminishing cluster of indicators, while Federation-aligned vessels formed an expanding network across 3 quadrants. "Our military position is similarly compromised," Thrawn stated flatly. "With the defection of the Torrid and Proximan defense forces, Council fleet strength has declined by 40%. Meanwhile, the Earth Federation Alliance has expanded its capabilities by an estimated 63%. The strategic balance has shifted decisively." Chancellor Vexar's skin briefly flashed a distressed gray before returning to formal blue. "Your assessment of diplomatic alternatives, Intelligence Chief?" Kithrin's expression remained carefully neutral, but his words landed with unmistakable force. "There are none, Chancellor. The Federation's proposal represents our only viable path forward. Rejection would accelerate our decline beyond any capacity for recovery." The chamber erupted in agitated exclamations. Chancellor Vexar raised his hands for silence, his skin now cycling through troubled colors. "Ambassador Quindar," he said once order had been restored, "you have observed the Federation Assembly firsthand. What insights can you offer regarding their governance model?" Quindar stepped forward, his silver skin reflecting the chamber's subdued lighting. "The Federation Alliance operates on fundamentally different principles than our Council," he began. "Where we have maintained a hierarchical structure based on species seniority, they have implemented a system of equal representation, regardless of technological development or historical longevity." "A chaotic arrangement," huffed Thisara, her tentacles curling with disapproval. "How can primitive species possibly contribute meaningfully to galactic governance?" "I had similar concerns," Quindar acknowledged. "However, what I observed was not chaos but vibrant cooperation. Species we dismissed as developing have contributed unique perspectives and innovative approaches to challenges that had stymied more established civilizations." He paused before adding, "including several that have significantly improved Tholian respiratory treatments beyond what our own researchers achieved." That revelation silenced further objections. The Tholian plague had ravaged Council space for centuries before human medical teams developed the first effective protocols, achievements that the Council had patronizingly attributed to fortunate accidents rather than genuine innovation. "The Federation model is admittedly different," Quindar continued, "but its results are undeniable. While Council systems face collapse, Federation territories demonstrate unprecedented growth and stability. They have effectively resolved resource distribution challenges that plagued our governance for millennia. Their collaborative security approach has reduced piracy by 70% in territories where implemented." Chancellor Vexar's skin had stabilized into a thoughtful blue-gray. "And our position within this Federation? Would the Council maintain any authority?" "The Council as currently constituted would not continue," Quindar replied frankly. "Individual member species would join as sovereign equals, with the same representation as Earth or any other participant. Our historical knowledge would be valued, but not privileged above other perspectives." The chamber fell silent as the implications settled. For thousands of years, the elder species represented in that room had defined civilization itself, determined who was worthy of recognition, who deserved a voice in galactic affairs. Now, they faced the prospect of surrendering that authority, of accepting equal standing with civilizations they had long dismissed as insignificant. "There is one alternative," General Wook suggested, his fur bristling with barely contained aggression. "We could consolidate our remaining forces for a decisive military action against key Federation assets. Demonstrate that the Council cannot be—" "No," interrupted Kithron sharply. "Such action would be catastrophic. Federation defensive capabilities far exceed our current strength. More importantly, they have systematically avoided direct confrontation, despite having numerous opportunities. They seek transformation, not destruction. We would be unwise to choose the latter when they offer the former." Chancellor Vexar's skin cycled through troubled patterns before settling into a resolute blue. "Distinguished representatives, I have served as Chancellor for 7 centuries. Throughout that time, I have maintained my conviction that the Council represents the pinnacle of civilized governance, that our collective wisdom, accumulated over millennia, qualified us to guide the development of younger species." He paused, his skin briefly flashing a humbled gray. "I was wrong. Our treatment of the Earth delegation revealed not wisdom, but arrogance. Not guidance, but domination. We mistook age for insight, tradition for truth. And now, we face the consequences of that fundamental error." Murmurs rippled through the chamber, but none voiced direct opposition. The evidence had become too overwhelming to deny. "I propose," Vexar continued, "that we accept the Federation's invitation, not merely as a tactical necessity, but as recognition that perhaps, just perhaps, we have something to learn from those we too quickly dismissed." The formal vote that followed was unprecedented in Council history, not for its outcome, which unanimous approval had rendered a foregone conclusion, but for its tacit acknowledgement of a truth 10,000 years in the making. Wisdom came not from age alone, but from the willingness to evolve. 1 month later, as representatives from the former Council worlds took their places in the expanded Federation Assembly on Earth, the transfer of galactic governance was marked not by conquest or capitulation, but by a simple recognition. The future belonged to those who built bridges rather than hierarchies, who valued contribution over seniority, who understood that true civilization emerged not from imposing order, but from embracing diversity. Admiral Jake Morrison, observing the proceedings from a discreet position at the Assembly's edge, felt no triumph in the moment, only a quiet satisfaction that the diplomatic failure at Nexus Prime had ultimately led to something better than success. The humans had withdrawn not to punish or dominate, but to demonstrate a fundamental truth. Genuine cooperation could only exist between equals. As the Assembly began its first unified session, Morrison reflected that perhaps the greatest achievement of humanity's venture into the stars had not been technological or military, but philosophical. The simple, revolutionary idea that every voice deserved to be heard, regardless of how long it had been speaking. The galaxy would never be the same, and that, he concluded, was entirely for the better.